The question that has come up is, well, why doesn't the dream mechanism wipe out the emotion associated with molar memories? And that question had been around for some years with me, because I had been wondering as well, why doesn't the dream mechanism wipe out the emotion associated with trauma? And when it came down to really severe traumas, I used to say, well, it must be because the trauma memories are going into a special memory store, a hypnotic memory store. The patient is in deep hypnosis. They're going into a hypnotic memory store. But in recent years, we've learned from our research that all learnings are done in hypnosis. So that explanation doesn't carry weight. And we know from dream expectation theory and the massive research that supports that dreaming takes away and wipes out the emotional expectations associated with experiences that weren't fulfilled during the day. And so this problem is there. Why isn't it cleaning out the emotions associated with molar memories and traumas? And in answering this question, I've become aware that I had an assumption I hadn't questioned for the last 20 years. And in realizing that assumption, I suddenly knew the answer not only to the answer to this question, but also the answer to another question. Why must we dream in metaphor? Now, those of you who are familiar with our research will know that we all dream in metaphor. We can observe it happening in the autosymbolic effect when people first go to sleep. We can see thoughts converted to metaphors. There's no doubt but the metaphorical process exists. We put out massive evidence to show that dreams are metaphors. But why? Why? Why does the brain do something so bloody complicated as to put stuff into metaphor? Now, we can say things like, well, the part of the brain that's being used is the part of the brain that does metaphor very well, such as the right neocortex. We can say stuff like, well, in instinctive behavior, it has to be pattern matched in the environment, and that's a metaphorical process. Oh, that's true. But why bother? Why not just switch off that process? Why has the brain kept the process whereby dreams are discharged through metaphor? And I think we can answer that question now. And it relates to an unwarranted assumption that we had in expectation fulfillment theory of dreams. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I don't know how you've thought about this, but I've always thought of the dream process as the unexpressed emotions from the day. You act them out through metaphor. Those emotions are expressed, as it were, taken off the memory, and then the memory is stored. So you take the emotion off, and then the memory is stored. But it can't be that way. Because if you think about it for a moment, suppose you see somebody and you're sexually attracted to them, at work, say, and because, you're married and all the rest of it, you repress that impulse. Well, that will surely get expressed in a dream tonight. But the dream can't wipe out the sexual attraction you feel for that worker. Because if it did, it would wipe out the basis for sexual motivation in the brain. If the dream process wiped out the motivations we didn't express, it would destroy the motivational system in the brain. What the dream process does is, it takes the autonomic arousal charge and discharges it. But what it holds on to is an accurate record of everything you experienced and felt. It has to. Otherwise, it will destroy the basis of motivation in the brain. So it's not simply unhooking the emotion and taking it off. The brain has to record exactly what happened. Now, how is the brain to do that? It has to keep a record of what happened, while at the same time taking the emotional charge out of the autonomic nervous system. How is it to do that? Well, if it uses the original experience, suppose you actually have a fantasy that night in your dreams where you have sex, make love to this colleague at work. The brain now has got a problem. Okay, it's acted out the emotion using the original memory. But what does it do with this memory? If it puts it into the memory store, it's created a false memory which will totally destroy the memory system. On the other hand, if it wipes it out by forgetting it, it'll create holes in your memory. You'll have no memory of meeting that person and being with them. So if the brain were to use the original experience for discharging emotional arousals, it would either have to opt for creating false memories, which would be catastrophic, or else forget the memories it's acted out, in which case it would create huge holes in the memory system, which would be equally catastrophic. The only possible thing the brain can do is use an analogous experience and forget it. So we have to dream in memory. There is no other possibility. We have to dream in metaphor. So the brain holds on to an accurate record of what we've experienced, including our motivations. What's discharged in dreams is the autonomic arousal. But the record states we were sexually excited. That is a different thing to storing emotion. Emotions are not stored, but a record of what you felt is stored, not the emotion. And that's used as a template. So of course the dream mechanism discharges the emotion in post-traumatic stress disorder. Of course it discharges the emotion in molar memories. But that's just switching off arousal currently in the autonomic nervous system. There's still a template in the conditioned memory store that says, when this template is pattern matched, you better get sexually excited. You better emotionally overreact. You better get highly anxious, depending on what the record says. So there is no suppressed emotions in the memory store, as Freud thought. All there are is records of our learnings. And when they're pattern matched, they trigger off the original level of emotion associated with that learning.